an assurance that as CS you will not spend your time in Nakuru County campaigning for 2027 at the expense of serving Kenyans?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the nominee, Honorable Lee, Kenya recently ratified the EU-Kenya Economic Partnership Agreement, which seeks to create and enhance market access to Kenyans' exports to European Union. I want to hear from you, what will you leverage on this agreement so that we can protect the local markets and also increase our exports to increase our revenues from the European Union. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, Kenya is also in bilateral agreements with major partners like US, whereby the United States, through AGOA, is coming to collapse, actually to be precise, September this year. And you know the relationship between Kenya trade and the US is quite massive. As the minister, coming, if approved, to come to this space, what will you tell Kenyans on their face who have been benefiting from business between US and Kenya, and what should we expect from it? Lastly but not least, Mr. Speaker, is a question from public, whereby when you are the governor for Nakuru, we had the tragedy of Solai Dam. And it really exposed, and we lost Kenyans on that. And a report was done, and a criminal negligence on duty by officers in Nakuru County was placed on them, as you are the governor there. What measures did you do? What response can you tell Kenyans? Are you going to be responsible with our trade and it gets to the same strategies in this country? It is unfortunate, but what measures did you take to make sure that people were brought to book, and at least the county government, did they compensate those people? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mukami, we'll take some more.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I would like to ask our nominee the strategies he is intending to employ to boost the businesses of small-scale traders. Honorable Speaker, if you go to Kinyajui Road, Nyamakima, majority of the small traders have closed down. I would really like to know, I would really like to hear from him what he's going to do so that we can bring those young people back to their businesses. The other question, in your view, what are the challenges that negatively affect the growth of exports, and what should be done to improve the visibility of Kenyan export in international market? Thank you.
Yes, Lee, you can answer those.
Thank you, Chairman. Allow me to start with the last question by the Honorable Member of Parliament for Nyeri. The issue of small-scale business people, I think, is a huge concern, both in Nyamakema and across all our urban areas. And I think, as I mentioned there earlier, the issue of cash squeeze, where a lot of suppliers have not been paid by government, affects the cash in circulation. And because most of them sell consumables or those things you buy on the go, then it means when people do not have money, then that affects. So one of the areas I hope to be working together with the cabinet and the cabinet together with the CS for finance is to be the champion for paying all suppliers in government. If that money was to hit the accounts of the suppliers, there will be an immediate party in all these places we are talking about. People who are about to face foreclosure will be saved. So, and when the money is in circulation, there's more trade, there's more tax, everybody benefits. So I think we need to agree that, again, the other issue is for banks, because it is very lucrative to put their money in treasury bills and treasury bonds. They don't want to lend to the small people. So again, there's no money in circulation. So let's agree that the small business people are suffering from the cash squeeze that is currently there. And everything must be done, even also by this House, to help us unlock that challenge so that we can give hope. On the issue of funding, I would strongly recommend that we need to find a sustainable way of funding our small businesses, although it is also not right to call them small. People tend to live up to the titles they are given. So I think we need to find a better way of calling them, because it's like confining them to the smallness in which they are. But in short, government must come up with a way, or even if it means the commercial banks must set aside a certain percentage of their money for a certain category of industries and so on, that can help us avail cash flow to the businesses. And the honorable member has also asked about growth of export and the hindrance. I think our first biggest export is tea, and I think we've been doing fairly well in spite of the current challenges, but more importantly also in the area of horticulture and flowers. And I think the biggest challenge we are having there is the availability of air freight, because most of these fresh produce would require to go by air to Europe, to the Middle East and other places. So the constraints within the national carrier and other cargo airlines from Nairobi to all these destinations means that we cannot be able to expand that area. And therefore, I will be seeking to work with the Minister, the CS for Transport, to see how we can expand our cargo handling capacity, because that's an area that can grow within a very short time. Mr. Chair, allow me also to mention on the issue of the European Union Economic Partnership. I think one of our biggest destinations is actually the Netherlands, where we take our flowers and to the UK for vegetables and others. And again, the issue of there being good agreements that protect us, and secondly, the air freight, the cargo, that will help us to unlock. And also maybe giving specific funding to these sectors so that we can increase. We have a lot of land, we have many people who are willing to invest, but because of the heavy capital required, sometimes it has not been very easy for many to venture in. On AGOA, we are at the final end of the AGOA agreement, and once it collapses, many of the industries, including the textile industries, that heavily rely on the AGOA would be at risk. We are hoping to be able to conclude once there's a change of government, but there's talk of an extension of 1 year as we negotiate the next agreement. But I think the bigger request, Mr. Chairman, would be when these negotiations are happening, they have very huge implications, even 10, 20, 30 years from now. Maybe our teams need to be the best sharpshooters you could ever think of, because those small little commas mean a lot. And when a small country like Kenya is negotiating with the US, which is of 1,000 times its economy, we need to also be careful, because if we open all the doors, our industries are all going to shut. So I think there's a need to have a very strategic team to ensure that these negotiations are done and that national interests prevail at all stages. There was also the question of the Solai Dam and whether there was criminal negligence. Allow me, Mr. Chair, to say that indeed there was a tragedy in Nakuru. That was barely 2 months after I got into office. I got into office around, I don't remember this 2 months, but it was a very short period of time. There's nothing much I would have done. I had barely settled, and this tragedy now comes. But out of that tragedy, a lot we have learned, including a disaster mitigation strategy for the county. Nakuru is home to much of the export we are talking about. So there are very many dams all over Nakuru. And whenever it rains, and maybe there is excess rain, the issue of monitoring of water levels and also warning signals, early warning signals to families down would be there. The issue of insurance also is important, so that whenever there is a financial loss, we can also help those families. But Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman, allow me to say also this matter went to court, and they settled out of court on their own volition between the victims and the owner, and for now they are happily working together, and the farm employs over 1,000 people. Without that farm, that whole community would not survive. So they have a good working engagement, but the safety precautions must be upheld at all times.
Was the dam reconstructed?
Yes, it was reconstructed, Mr. Chairman. under the supervision of NEMA and other regulatory agencies, both from the county and the national government.
Mr. Speaker, if you allow me, just a follow-up question on what is said, that we are doing very well on export, especially tea. We want to hear him as if he's approved as a trade minister. There has been challenging of our export for tea lying in the port of Mombasa. What probably, if you have any recollection or you have been briefed, you'll do better and different than what has been done to make sure that the tea farmers in this country cannot continue waiting for their tea to be sold to get the benefit of the sale without any further delay, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wish to say that I do not have the full information regarding the current state of
You
the
actually
stock.
said tea exports are good, but there are challenges.
Yes.
Yes.
So it is our best export for now, but it is experiencing challenges. But I want to confirm that our best run crop in Kenya is actually tea. The farmers can deliver their tea, go home, get their money at the end of the month, and get a bonus. So the challenge we are having right now, I think, will be sorted, and I want to say that will be my first agenda. But beyond that, even though Kenya is a key producer of tea, if you go to the Western world and say you want Kenyan tea, you won't find it anywhere. So it is blended and lost in the world flavors. Yet it is the best. So that which we are best for, nobody can go to the capitals of the world and say, I want Kenyan tea. So again, it's a challenge to us. I mean, today it is possible for me to open a shop in New York, another person to open in Amsterdam. We create this network so that we don't over-rely on the auction in Mombasa. Over-reliance on only one source of selling will create challenges in future. So we need to look for multiple options of selling, including direct sales in UAE and many other places. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
No,
Allow.
you have not answered about milk export to Middle East. Oh, you are silly. You are silly.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, we have talked about, the Honorable Robert talked about companies closing and what we need to do. I think you've already mentioned the issue of cost of energy, but the President, His Excellency President William Ruto has already initiated a process to try and understand on a case by case these companies that may be going out. What is the issue? Is it something we can be able to solve? And I want to assure this House that as soon as I get the opportunity, I will sit, and even if it means looking for some of them, those who have not completely exited, to see how we can reverse that. But I'm also troubled because it is also true, in recent years we've had local companies that have also closed, including Mobius, our vehicle manufacturer that would have given us pride and nationalism as we venture out there. So I want to assure this committee, I've already sent word to that company because Kenyans hold this very dear to themselves, and we would want to see some of those things as much as possible, how we can be able to work with them. The unpredictable taxation and policies by government. Again, there is a thinking that every year we have a finance bill, it changes excise duty on something, import duty on another. Yet, this is a company that just came to set in Kenya, has a lifespan of about 10 years before you can return your money, but you cannot do your projections on profitability because it depends on factors way beyond yourself. So the current thinking is to try and come with a tax regime for a minimum of maybe 5 years, so that as you come to invest here, if you are in livestock, if you are in food processing, you can know for the next 5 years, this is what I expect. And stability in the tax regime. And I think this will be a very important card because most of the investors will be citing this as a challenge in terms of, because they have obligations with the banks, but you have no idea what kind of money you will make because it's not entirely in your space. The Honorable Robert also asked me whether I will be returning to Nakuru. I want to confirm that Nakuru is my home and I will always be there. Because if I want to promote Kenya, unless we annex Nakuru, you know, it's part of here, and there's a huge industrial base. And I am here also courtesy of the people of Nakuru. If they had not elected me, nobody would have known me. So I would be the last person to say here that among the many goodies I have for Kenya, Nakuru will not be there. But I'll also cooperate with the leaders who are there.
That was not the question. The question was, you served one term as governor.
So you have about time.
Your eyes could be on another term. Are you going to spend government time as a CS rotating around Nakuru, trying to get a re-election for a second term, or you'll go around serving Kenyans as expected of a CS? I think, Robert, that was your question. Yes.
So, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think for the last 2.5 years, I have given my support to the county in a way of prayer. And
Actually, it's good to acknowledge that there's a member of the public who has sent in exactly the same question. So just go ahead and answer.
Yes, so I've said I support my county and I would want it to prosper. The choice of what would happen in 2.5 years, including for all the members who are here, I'm not too sure you have the answers yourself. So I think these answers will come as we move forward, and I will be well advised by including the appointing office, including the people of Nakuru. But I think it would be suicidal for any person, including yourself, Mr. Chairman, to say bye to the people of Bungoma. You'll never want to see them again. It is for them that you're here.
Yes.
Point of order, Speaker.
Yes, proceed.
I think the Honorable Lee would have just said, I'm not going to spend government money in running my politics in Nakuru. That's all. Whatever happens in 27 exactly, nobody knows. But you cannot spend government money, Minister, to run your politics in Nakuru. That's what Kenyans were concerned.
Oh.
Thank you, Speaker.
Okay. I'm well guided. I have no intention of that nature.
Chairman, I've not asked my questions.
You did.
What I did was just a follow-up question to it was an intervention, Honorable Chairman. I will go straight.
He has not finished. He has not answered Owen Bayer's question, and Ferdinand.
It's okay.
We have not finished.
Yes.
I was going up.
So,
okay,
speed it up.
The point is that we will not spend inordinate part of our time doing local politicking, but we will benefit Nakuru as much as any other part of this country, and we will forever be grateful to the people of that place. The Honorable Baye, the issue of people leaving the country, I think much as it is true that there are some people or some companies that have left the country, I would always want to see, I mean, is a door, there'll be always somebody coming and another one going. If we over-focus and create a perception, people are leaving Kenya, and the people who are saying that are Kenyans, we are also participating in creating a negative attitude about our country. So we need to say, 2 came, the 3 went. I mean, GTC was not here the other day. All these big Chinese companies that have come, and many other buy locals that have started. So I will not sit on the side of saying companies are leaving Kenya. I will say some are leaving, others are coming. We have many pharmaceutical companies, including from the US, that are setting up at Tattoo City. Many others are coming towards our economic zones that we have already set aside. So I would not say that's not an entirely correct statement, but you have tended to focus on the exit while giving a blind eye to those who are busy coming to bring money and bring investment to our country. Then, so the issue is also to come up with a retention mechanism, and we plan to make Ken Invest, which is the main agency responsible for attracting investment, to equip them so that you have a one-stop shop when you come, because you don't want to come and you're told go to Kiambu County, the next day you're told go to NEMA, the other day you're told go to this agency. So we should have officers who can hold this new investor. Remember, they don't even know the country until maybe 1 year, and then you can file a report. If they have an issue, we can look into it. But while still saying this, it would be important to say the issue of governance remain a key issue. If a big company quoted in their country come here, and the first thing there's demand for some facilitation of sort, many people don't understand that language. So we need to help our people to channel our interest into partnerships. If a big company has come, we have learned you can partner with this cooperative, and together we can move forward. So the thing is, how do we structure investments so that we do not end up having a tag that can adversely affect our investments?
Chairman, I just want to put a rider on that question, because I see one of the reasons why we lose some foreign investors. It is because some of them, they've been asking about having what we call tax holidays, but there has been a lot of taxation on them. So maybe how do you balance in ensuring that we have these tax holidays and at the same time we still collect revenue? I think this is one of the areas why we lose some foreign investors, and there must be some mitigation on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So while getting to that, there was the issue of KEBS and counterfeits. I think one of the biggest challenges we have with KEBS is that the standards are there, but enforcement requires support from other agencies. So I think moving forward, we need to look for a way in which we can give KEBS the teeth to bite. So for example, if they discover there's an anomaly with a particular product, they need to go through interior, get officers, and so on. So I think the issue of enforcing so that the steel we produce or the cement is to the highest standard. And this will help us to instill trust and confidence with investors, because some of the key areas where we require government intervention is in standards. No single company can ensure the standard across the board, but government can do that, and KEBS is up to the job, but we need to review its mandate, especially with respect to enforcement. Then there is the issue of tax holidays asked by the Honorable Mishi. It is true that there are companies that come and do not strictly fit within our special economic zones or export processing zone, and I think some of these things can be looked on a case by case. But I think we also need to look at what would they otherwise be getting in other countries vis-a-vis what we are giving them, and ensure that at all times we are competitive. And I think one of the most important things is to learn how some of the major economies in the world operate. They have big companies, say if you talk of Korea and the Samsung, and the Samsung has over 500,000 employees, but has another over 200 companies that rely on it. These 200 are actually SMEs. So also if you're able to empower some of the mid-level, they will also come along with the small companies, and together we can move forward. And I think these are conversations we should have. And closely related to that, especially for foreign investment, is that there's always been an old debate. Even as you bring foreigners, you need to direct them which sectors to go, because you don't want a situation where they come and put a butchery and a hardware next to one run by locals. So I think within our investment policy, we also need to ensure that we don't just attract investment, we also direct it where it can be most beneficial and protect our local investments. Then,
Speaker, may I ask a question? Yes. Honorable Lee, one of the issues, you've talked about various strategies, but I've not heard you say anything about incentives to foreign investors, like giving them the land, giving them tax breaks. If you could just elaborate on that.
Through the chair, I think also in the trade, in the Ministry of Trade, we have
Canvest. So you are now just shooting questions without going through the chair. That's not our modus operandi, but go ahead, Mukami.
Yeah, what I wanted to tell the nominee, in the trade, in the Ministry of Trade, we have Canvest. Those are the ones who are supposed to guide whoever is coming to invest in this country. But I was also thinking in future, we may think about the foreign investors who are coming here in this country. They must we cooperate them with locals to avoid whatever they are earning in this country. You know, like Chinese,
we have a law on local content, don't we?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
It's just enforcement.
Okay, you enforce that.
Yes. Mary, ask your question.
Thank you,
One
Chairman.
question.
No, Chair had not asked. Allow me, I'll not go to the preamble. I'll go straight, I have three.
Chair, number one, we talked about dependency on imports, the substandard, the counterfeit, name them, that are impacting negatively on the local industries. My question is, we may even impose taxes to discourage importation of those substandard goods. We may even do whatever it takes, but what are you going to do as the minister if you nominee, you are approved, to promote local content and encourage use of locally produced goods? Because if you do not change the mindset, then even if we do all that, that may be in vain. Secondly, with the high rate of unemployment, what programs for skills development are you going to support? Although I know that will cut across other sectors, education, labor, and what have you. Because why are we producing graduates for opportunities that do not exist? If we do not need psychologists as a country, why are we continue to produce them? Why are we continue to produce accountants to come and stay at home for 10, 15 years unemployed from the time they graduated? I think that is also an area I feel you need to give us your thoughts as you take up the ministry if approved. And the last one is, for Kenya to achieve significant industrialization by the year 2030, and you've already alluded to this, we need to address the challenges in the manufacturing sector. High cost of production, deficits in infrastructural, infrastructure within the sector. And case among them is the sugarcane industry in the Western region. Those are some of the challenges that have been bedeviling that sector. So if we approve you, what are you going to do to address these challenges across? Thank you.
Last, Naisula.
Thank you, Chairman. Listening to the nominee, and even from his preamble, he seems to have thought about the challenges that are there that hinder manufacturing. You talked about high cost of electricity, taxation, and all. What are some, because when you speak here, we think tomorrow we're taking off if you get nominated and approved. What are some of the challenges that you foresee that might hinder all these good things that you've talked to us about here once you are nominated and appointed?
Can you answer those? Mishi, you have a question? I thought you have asked. Okay, go ahead. You are a joyrider to many questions.
No, thank you. You know that was somebody else's question, but I was just putting a rider on that.
So go ahead.
It was not my question.
Your own now,
yeah, thank you, Honorable Chairman. Honorable Chairman, I understand the nominee was once the governor of Nakuru County, and during that time you facilitated the setup of the Bahati Industrial Park, which focused on leather and textile industry. My question is, how will you replicate this model at a national level, particularly by promoting the growth of the leather industry in regions where we feel that we have potential for raw material sourcing? I'm looking on the area like the Ukambani and even Northeastern. My last question, you also successfully attracted investment in the Nakuru Special Economic Zone. We are having what we call Dongokundu Special Economic Zone, and it is been established in my constituency, that is Likoni constituency. This proposal has been there for the previous two regimes. To date, we are just hearing Dongokundu Special Economic Zone, but little has been achieved. What are your plans to ensure that we actualize this dream? And maybe, do you know the status of this project? Do you have the budget for this project, or it will just remain a promise or rather public relation? Thank you, Honorable Chairman.
Chair, can you answer one from the public? Just one.
Let him finish that first.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Allow me to start with the Honorable Ferdinand. And he had asked about our exports to the Middle East, and specifically beef and goat and the Bachuma Gate, where we really used to do, you hold the animals before you send them out. And maybe to make a special plea also to the nation, we are about 5 hours by air to the Middle East, and by sea maybe 10, 12 days. That is a region that has serious food deficiency. They can't grow food in the desert. However, they have a lot of money. They have a lot of resources. So Kenya is a natural source of food, including the beef, and I want to commend the MP for bringing that matter. So some of the issues that have been conversed previously, including hindrances to opening those markets, include diseases. So we send our beef, our goat and all that, and when it gets there, we are told it has this problem. And the biggest challenge is that when a particular disease or traces of a disease are found, they will not say it is from exporter X or Y. They will say it is from Kenya. So Kenya is one source. So if we also don't clean our market, so that we say we need 500,000 goats every month, and that can keep all these pastoralist areas busy for the whole year. So I think we need a better communication so that people understand for what reason are we recommending. And then also for diseases, if I don't take care of my animals and you take care of yours, as soon as they interact, the same problem will come back. So I think we need an honest conversation, and unfortunately you have food coming from very far to the Middle East, and we are just next door. And our young people are living here to go and work there as house girls and other jobs. Yet they can work at home, stay in the comfort of a family, and be able to earn a good living. So I think there is a bit of need to change those dynamics. The Honorable Ferdinand, I also wish to inform you that the President, together with the whole team from the ministry, is currently in the UAE for signing of a trade agreement. And these are some of the issues we'll be looking into. And I want to call upon members of parliament and the country at large to align ourselves now to the market. In fact, we are getting to a situation where the country has secured more markets than we can supply. You know, so if we can't supply those markets, the bigger question will be, should we be looking for more markets or go back mashambani and create the products that we need? And I think this is really where we are. Even avocado and many of the other products, the issue is now being able to create that value chain, the logistics for export, and getting our young people to benefit from that. And closely related to that, the issue of engaging our young people.
Excuse me, I just want to inform the nominee, Pachuma was a holding ground.
That's what it is.
So treatment, what have you, then after that, we'll export the animals, live animals, which are actually healthy.
Isn't that what he said? Yeah.
It's a quarantine.
It's a quarantine area to drench diseases, then export.
Yeah.
But Lee, do you want to continue exporting live animals, or you do value addition here and export the beef, so that you make good the hides, make good the hoofs, the bones, the horns, which are also products for trade?
Mr. Chairman, I want to confirm that if now the conversation is whether it is alive or dead, then that's a good conversation. But first, we have a deficit in the number of animals that we can be able to provide for the market. Then now we go to the next level where we slaughter, but again, it's good to say in some markets they prefer it alive. And as long as they are able to pay the price that compensates for all the sub-components, I think we will try and go on a case-by-case depending on the market. But my submission is that the world has a food deficit, especially those who are close to us. We have the benefit of very good young working population, educated, ready to do everything. In fact, some of the creativity we have seen in the social space, if it was converted to selling beef, to selling Masai Mara, to selling our tourism, to doing the next big movie about Lion King, this country would change. So we just need to reconfigure ourselves, but you have all that it takes for us to progress. Mr. Chairman, I think I've answered the Honorable Ferdinand. On the issue of the impact, the Honorable Mary, the impact of imports to the local market and the damage thereof. I think we've already said this, you know, I mean, there's no country that will allow unmitigated flow of goods to come and compete with its own industries. You know, that is completely unthinkable. And it is for that reason we have requested that for any legislation that touches on taxation, both reducing imports or increasing our exports, there should be a broader conversation and ensuring that our national strategic interests are actually taken into account. On unemployment and skill development, I think this is also a very critical question. Other nations in the world, for example China, when they decided that they want to become a major industrial nation, they targeted certain skills. And today China produces 1.5 million engineers every year to align to its industrial agenda. So again, we must look at our education, what do we need, and where do we direct our young people. I have looked just at my own small research, and most of my nephews are all doing IT and ICT and coding and all those things. So expect a long season of coding by this generation. So I think it's also important we try and align our universities with the needs of the nation in the next few years to come. I suspect I'm through with most of the questions. The Honorable Naisula. Will we take off tomorrow? I think the answer is yes. And I think that the big issue is, first, can we agree there's a problem? And once we agree, diagnosis is the most important part. If you've agreed on the diagnosis, then the rest is easy. And I want to submit that probably the sectors that can turn around the economy, in my opinion, is largely in the area of trade, especially on exports. Recently, I listened to the Minister for Finance talk about the huge obligations we have in the next 3-4 years. $2 billion, $4 billion. Where will that money come? If we engage in these exports and we get serious to the extent that our young people are engaged back at home, this is not something that should worry us. But if we continue as we are, then we'll have a major crisis in the days to come. So we really need to declare export a national priority in view of the obligations that are ahead of us. Then the Honourable Member also talked about how do we align everybody so that we speak the same conversation. I am new, as you can imagine, but my hope is to request for a meeting with members of parliament so that we understand the importance of industry and how it can impact on everybody. Secondly, is to meet the governors and also the MCA, not the MCAs, the CCs in charge of trade. Because finally, these are the people who will be taking up that. And then together, if we all align, then I'm sure we will be able to make a good outcome out of it. The Honourable Mishi, the issue of replicating leather industry and value addition, I think we are essentially a meat-eating nation. If you look at our Nyamachoma culture and you imagine how many hides we get out of it, yet our reputation in the shoe business, in the leather business, remains very shaky. So there is a missing link between that Nyamachoma culture and the shoe industry. So again, we want to work with the stakeholders in the industry. And as I said earlier, government must look for a way of identifying maybe 2 or 3 major players and facilitating them so that we become a serious shoemaker, not just for Kenya, but also for the region. We have our police, we have everybody, and government being the biggest spender. If we can commit that to giving our local companies, then that can change the dynamics. But Mr. Chairman, looking at all these things together with the others that we have said, oh, my apology, there was a question on sugarcane. Dongo Kundu. I want to say that of all the special economic zones that the government is working on, this is the closest to the port, and it has very huge opportunities. And just last week, I am not allowed to meet people who want to brief me, but I had 3 people who are, dying to come and meet me, and I told them, wait until I'm vetted, and they insisted. So when they came, they said they want to go there, but sometimes maybe just getting that go-ahead sometimes has been difficult. So I want to take this opportunity to say, all investors for Dongo, Kundu, and other places are welcome to the office, and we should be able to link up with the members of parliament for those respective areas so that the public also is aware of what is coming up. And on the issues of governance, which has sometimes been an impediment, I want to assure Kenyans they will be coming to get an officer who is ready to serve their nation. Lastly, on the issue of sugarcane, maybe just to say that I am not very familiar with the exact status of what percentage you're able to produce locally, but I think this is an area we can work to try and increase production so that our people do not have to rely on imported sugar. In fact, in my view, in a few years, we should be thinking of reversing that. But allow me to touch on the issue of palm oil, which is essentially a component you require to make your cooking oil. And the import is actually from Malaysia, which enjoys a similar, and Indonesia, similar climatic conditions as your average Mombasa, parts of Nyanza, and so on. And therefore, there is nothing climatically to say they can't grow there. But you have religiously imported from those countries, and therefore we need now to say, how can we turn our coastal belt into a palm oil belt? And I think this is where we need to work with members of parliament for those areas and agree that if you want to process these kind of products, you must start a plantation or even have outgrowers, and maybe working with other seed companies, produce varieties that can work there. And I think these are practical solutions, and it is widely believed that when those countries were starting their palm oil industry, they got advice from us. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chair.
Thank you. Yes, Mule.
Thank you, nominee Lee. There's a question being posed to you by the public that Kenya is one of the countries whereby is suffering what is being called capital export or capital flight, or money generated locally and end up in different. Why? Because of contractors and because of businessmen who are not of Kenyan origin. So the public is asking, as a minister if approved for investment, trade and industry, what are you going to do to reverse this norm? Because it has really impacted our economy badly for the last several years, whereby people come and do business, get paid using taxpayers' money.
Are you asking a question on behalf of the public?
Yes.
Or you are making a speech?
No, I'm asking on behalf of the public.
Okay.
Yeah, and I stated very clearly.
Okay.
So the public want to know, what are you going to do as the Minister for Trade Investment to make sure that we stop this capital export, please?
Thank you.
Can I ask on behalf of the public just one question?
Yes,
very
one.
short.
Okay.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, to the nominee, you know the history of retail business in this country. We had Uchumi, it collapsed. We had Nakumat, it collapsed. We had Tuskys, went the same way. ShopRite came into this country shortly and left. Now we have Naivas and Carrefour. What are you going to do to stabilize the retail business in this country so that we do not continue, one, lose all our Kenyan local grown retailers and attract others, but also ensure that the stability. There are other smaller ones that are coming up. What are you going to do when given the opportunity to ensure the stability and they grow and they actually take over the Kenyan market? Thank you.
There are two questions from members of the public. One is that in 2018, during your tenure as the governor of Nakuru, there were concerns raised about your office spending 43 million on foreign trips. As nominee for Cabinet Secretary, how will you ensure a balance between conducting necessary international and regional trade engagements and maintaining transparency and cost effectiveness as you use public resources? The second one says, East Africa Breweries has of late been accused of outsourcing basic services such as transport, distribution and warehousing to their partners in foreign nations at the expense of local Kenyan-owned players. What measures will you put in place to immediately put this to an end?
Yes, Lee, can you respond to the question by Honorable Mulder on behalf of a member of the public and the two from the Deputy Speaker?
Thank you.
And from Owen Bayer.
Thank you. With respect to capital flight, and this refers to huge amounts that foreigners make and they have to repatriate to their countries. I think this is one of the conditions that is cited for ease of doing business. If you allow investors to come into your country and when they make the profits, you deny them to take out, then your ease of doing business goes down. Yes. What we need to do is to offer them alternatives, good attractions, but to bar somebody from taking their money out once they have made it may actually stop them, because the first reason why they came here was that. I don't want to cite some countries that tried that, where the issue of forex became a very big challenge, and eventually huge industries that had already set there were crippled. So the ease of capital flow is very important. And if anything, I would be asking, you know, there are some countries out there in the world who have no other business other than you taking your money. So we should create that possibility. Anybody who has money and they want to take it somewhere, it is stable. We won't wake up tomorrow and get insane. This should be the place. Give attractions, interest, stability, all those issues. So I hope I've answered the honourable member with respect to capital flight and contractors and all the others. The retail business, starting with Uchumi and many other retail traders that have come here, I think there's a gap in terms of legislation because a lot of these companies normally start very well, but eventually there's delay in payment of suppliers, and before long money is diverted and we get into problems. So I think on the area of regulating this area to some reasonable level. And my main concern is when a retail chain goes down with pending bills of maybe 10 billion, that 10 billion you must look at it in terms of 200,000 to a small guy who will never wake up again, another company that has closed. So when one retail chain goes down, many others go with it. So we need to regulate it, make it profitable, and ensure that there is good governance. While on the same, allow me also to confirm that the existence of these retail chains is actually a channel for selling our goods. When Uchumi was around and we had branches in Uganda, Tanzania, our exports to those countries were much higher than they were. When they closed, there was an immediate shutdown. So it is important to get your brand, because it helps you to be your last connection to the consumers. And as you probably know, if a supermarket chain has origins in a different country, there will be a bias on the kind of goods you find on their shelves. So if you had our Uchumi or any other in Addis Ababa and all those places, then it would mean we have a channel to send our goods. And it's very difficult for a farmer from Naivasha to take his half a pickup all the way to Dar es Salaam. But if there's a drop-off point here in Nairobi where everybody can bring and they're sure they'll be paid in another week or two, then we would change the kind of optics that we have. Then there's a mention of 43 million in foreign trip. I don't recall which year it was, but I would kindly request that a comparison is made with other counties. I suspect this is the lowest ever spent by a governor of a county of Nakuru's magnitude. I took over when it was 300, 400. So I think this should be a compliment. And I want to say in my last 2 years, I only went for 2 trips. And one of them was actually paid by the development partners. So I take that. On EABL outsourcing to outsiders, again, the Honorable Chairman has said there is a law on local content. However, the enforcement is our waste point. So if indeed, for example, the SGR, we enforced that local content, we would be able to point some 20 billionaires in this city. But because it is there, then you have foreigners who come, register locally, so they say it is a local company, so they beat the system. So we need to find ways in which, if government is investing in a 20 billion project, let there be an Onyango and a Kamau who have emerged out of that. And because we know they will still invest in their rural areas and places around, Kenyans will benefit from that. So there's a need to look at the local content aspect and how it can benefit. And I think this also goes to talk about EABL. I have no evidence as to whether it's happening or not, but just responding to that, together with all the other corporates in Kenya.
Just from a member of the public.
Yeah, from a member of the public. Yes. We're saying it's good corporate responsibility, you know. If we outsource everything out there and our young people are out here baying for our blood, we are not doing justice to our nation. So I think maybe we should find a way of companies doing returns, saying within this quarter or within this financial year, we are able to work with these companies and we can be able to verify. How this can be done, I am sure legislation can be worked around it. Thank you.
Excellent. One member from Nakuru, perhaps this is your friend. Lee is a very good leader from Nakuru. He always unites all communities. Give him an opportunity to serve us. That must be one of your supporters from Nakuru.
My enemies think the same.
Now, Lee, we are coming to... No, we're coming to an end. And I'll ask you a few questions about yourself, then give you an opportunity to make some last wish to this committee. What is your net worth in terms of wealth?
Thank you.
And houses, land, cash at bank, and whatever?
Mr. Chairman, my shares in family businesses are around 399 million, and some apartments worth 80 million. I have a loan of 8 million, and that gives me a modest net worth of 471,972.
For a former governor, that's very modest, I must say.
Yeah.
Have you ever been convicted in any court of law of any offense?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Have you ever been adversely mentioned in a parliamentary committee report?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Do you hold any office in any political party?
Not at the moment, but I've previously held office in Ubuntu People's Forum.
Yes.
UPF.
Have you ever been dismissed or removed from office for contravention of Article 75 of the Constitution?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Have you ever been associated with practices that depict bias, favoritism, tribalism, nepotism in the discharge of public duty?
Not to my knowledge, Mr. Chairman.
What is your last wish to this committee?
So, Mr. Chairman, first is to thank this committee and also the President for the honor of serving the nation, and to assure Kenyans that I will put my very best. And I know these opportunities don't come every day. And as a person who has been in public life, I am not one to run away from challenges. The more challenges there are, the more justification there is for some of us to make sure that we turn the tide, and we have no other country to go into. So I'll be seeking support from Parliament on areas to do with legislation, and all leaders together so that we can move forward. And as I said, I worked very closely with most of the members of Parliament here, including those who come, and I know that teamwork is very critical for success, and therefore I'll be calling upon many of those who are in office so that we can work together. And I pledge to do my best for Kenya.
Thank you, Honorable Lee. I bestowed on you a CBS title. That's what my clerks had given me. If you are not, I'm sure if you are found suitable, you will get some decoration soon. So unless you are lawfully held, we release you to go back to your other duties, and we wish you well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Much obliged.
Thank you.
Asante.
And Lee, when you have time, read a book called How to Lose an Interview.
To lose?
How to Lose an Interview. It includes losing temper.
On both sides. Thank you. Yeah. Asante.
Kwaheri. Yes. Yes. Honorable members, this brings to an end our engagement with the three nominees. I want to take this opportunity to thank all members, including our staff, for taking time off your break to come and discharge this national duty. We know we are on our long recess, but you took time out to come and discharge this duty, which, in my estimation, you have discharged very honorably and respectfully. We will adjourn the sitting now and give the clerk and his team time to do a draft report based on the material placed before us. The conclusions remain your purview, remain your jurisdiction. So I'll invite you tomorrow to be in this chamber at exactly 3 p.m. tomorrow, so that we look at the report and make our conclusions, whereafter we wait for the special sitting the next day. So let's have a good evening. Tomorrow's meeting will not... For our friends from the Fourth Estate, tomorrow's meeting is a closed meeting, the 3 o'clock meeting. So we will advise you to wait for the product in the chamber on Thursday. Thank you, honorable members. Have a good evening and enjoy having a happy new year.